All right, so we just had the Portland Open go down this past weekend. Our next Elite Plus event. We love to get our event classifications correct. Did you feel the plus in the air hunt?
I did. I could feel it all over me. It was just electric.
It was just, it was just the plus was
It was
very
just
apparent.
plussing everywhere.
Um, Yeah, so much plussing. We were over at the Glendevere Golf Property playing on two different courses, East and West. We'll start with the FPO here. So we had Sophia Donachie coming in third. We'll talk a little bit more about her because she kind of came out of nowhere. Holland Hanley in second place, and then first place, a name we would not have expected, Paige Pierce, taking it down in pretty dominant fashion. It ended up being only a two-stroke victory, but it really wasn't that close. There was some tomfoolery going on towards the end of that tournament. But Paige Pierce is back. Hunter, just knee-jerk reaction. Like, what's going through your mind?
Well, first off, because I can already hear the Paige fans chirping, right? Because I think literally like the last 2 weeks I've talked about how she didn't have drive, she didn't have passion, she wasn't looking fierce out there. And this is one of those situations where I am very happy to be wrong because the FPO field is just better if Paige Pierce is in contention. Um, and obviously, this has already been said on social media all over the place, and it's like people's first go-to is Kristen wasn't in the field. Well, that's fine,
Yeah.
whatever. Kristen hasn't been in the field before, and Paige still wasn't winning. And what I really like about this situation is obviously she had a rough start to the season, but she went fifth at OTB and then wins here. So it's not just a one-off like flash in the pan. Like she had gotten better. Like this is back-to-back good performances where she's trending upwards. And the
Yeah.
way she was playing out there, I don't know if it would have mattered per se if Kristen was in the field. When Paige Pierce is on,
Yeah.
like she is the best person to consistently beat or at least push Kristen Tatar. So this is great news for FPO, I think, and it's one of those situations where I'm stoked to be wrong because I didn't think Paige was gonna. I didn't
Yeah.
think she had dinner. I didn't think this was gonna happen,
This
but here we are.
this is like brutal for my like Paige Pierce gaslight narrative where every time we talk about the GOAT conversation, because we just talked about it on debate night last week, and every time we talk about Kristen versus Paige, I always like can't quite like remove myself from the fact that I feel like Paige is a lot better. Like I can't decide if she back in 2014 was just playing bad competition. Like I always feel like she was really good. And then this week it was like reinforcement of the idea that like when Paige Pierce is playing well, she's throwing her backhand looks untouchable. Like she's throwing these awesome hyzer flips. She's got great distance. She looks athletic. Her putt looks really well. She doesn't really have the forehand, and I think that's the biggest knock on her game. But like when I see Paige Pierce playing at this level, I think to myself, she is as good as anybody. And I was actually surprised. Yeah, I kind of forgot that like when anybody realistically wins and Kristen and Evelyn and them aren't there, that's kind of what the comments do. But like, and that's usually my reaction, but I didn't feel that way at all. Like
Well, I
when I
think
watched Paige play this tournament,
you can tell when someone's playing
yeah,
if it's like Kristen would have beat that person, and that's when
right.
I can hop on that bandwagon of like, okay, but like Kristen, I'm not hopping on that bandwagon this time. I'm actually going to hop on a different bandwagon. This is my opinion on Paige Kristen, right?
Okay.
I think that Kristen Tatar's ceiling and floor is like this, right? So that's why she's the first
Yeah.
ever 1,000 rated FPO player. So this is Kristen's ceiling. I think Paige's ceiling and floor is just bigger. So I think when Paige is at her best, I think she's the best FPO player in the world. She's just
Oh.
not there as consistently as Kristen. So
So
if
it's
if
kind of
we
like
can get
it's
her
like the Simon Lizotte effect almost.
exactly, I think if we can get Kristen hot and Paige hot at the same time, I think Paige wins, and I think it's a like absolute bloodbath. But I don't know. Kristen doesn't seem to do good in bloodbaths historically. I feel like when it's a punching match, it doesn't go her way. Like I feel like Kristen just kind of stomps people out. Maybe that's just a complete
Yeah.
wrong opinion, but that's how my gut feels. And Paige has been in a bunch
Yeah.
of all out brawls, and she's done good. So this is a really, if you're a Paige Pierce fan, I think this is a great sign. It's also a great time of the season for her to get going because like
Yeah.
there's a lot of tournaments coming up that if Paige can play like she just did, you gotta like her in them.
Certainly. Yeah, I think it's the narrative, the way it shapes out is because Paige spent all of her dominant era basically battling Katrina and always being in that kind of mindset, whereas Kristen these last few years has just been Yeah, she's just been dominating. So like she hasn't even been in that scenario as much, but it's really interesting. It's gonna be I'm gonna be very curious to see how she moves forward.
Well,
Just to kind of go over her perform. Yeah, go
I'll say
ahead.
the what to touch on a point you just made too. I think that Katrina Allen's fall off, it like almost takes away from Paige Pierce's greatness because Katrina Allen
Yeah.
is a much worse player today than she was when Paige and her were battling several years ago. And so when you're watching the today version of Paige and Kat, it's hard to remember how good they were in that like 2014, 15, like all those years. But like if you go back and
Mm.
watch and you just try to do the eye test, it passes the eye test that they would have been very competitive in today's FPO. Like if you copy and
Yeah.
paste those two into what we're seeing today, it's just hard because you still see those players in the field and they're just not the same people anymore.
Right. So going over Paige's performance, she started off with a decent round. I remember round one early. She got into the clubhouse tied for the lead, and we were kind of like, "Oh, there's Paige." But then I think Owen came out, fired 7 under, and it was like, "All right, let's just see what she does with this because she can see the top of the leaderboard, and that isn't always the case." She followed that up with 3 great rounds, including a hot round in both rounds 2 and 3. Very impressive back-to-back hot rounds. She led the field in C1 in regulation and also strokes gained T degree. Here's an important one. Only threw OB 4 times the entire event. That's only once per round average and was 86% C1X putting for the tournament as well. I believe she only missed 1 putt. So the one thing I do want to ask you is it a coincidence? And, yeah, I'll just say, is it a coincidence that Paige, now with OTB coming in 5th and this event winning, that both of these are open courses, and this is a course where it's really long, and a lot of our longest throwers, being Henna and Evelina especially, are not here right now?
It's not a coincidence. No, I think Paige is always like that's always been one of Paige's biggest advantages. Like we remember when U.S. Women's went to that short technical course a few years ago when Paige was at her prime. Like
Yeah.
then it just brought in so many people were able to just catch up to her because like that is one of the advantages she has, and even over Evelina and Henna, like the way Paige throws, I don't know. There's something about her way she gets distance seems a lot more achievable and controllable, especially with that drive in her back. I'm a huge fan of the
Right.
drive, and watching her throw it, it's like she's never going to miss. But she is better in the open than in the woods, but she's historically done fine in the woods. I mean, she's won Maple Hill. She's won pretty much any tournament you can name. She's won.
Yeah.
So I think what's good, and why I was saying I think the stretch is coming up is good, is because we're about to face like Beaver State's relatively open, and then I think we go into like the Idlewild, Des Moines, like that stretch.
Mm-hmm.
Even Idlewild's not that wooded. Like it's wooded and it can be seen as a technical course, but like there's still plenty of open and distance on it. So like the stretch that she's warming up into is a really good like transition stretch where she's not just going to be like, oh well, next week she's going to Northwood and it's going to like halt all momentum. Like I think she's getting
Right.
momentum in a time where it could keep like the and Kristen isn't going to be back for what another few weeks if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So like
Oh
she
yeah.
could Paige could pop off if she stays hot and win like 3 events before Kristen or 2 or 3 events before Kristen shows up, and then Kristen's meeting a full head of steam Paige Pierce. That could be something to watch.
Yeah, very. It's gonna be very interesting to watch. I agree. Like I said I think it was on debate night as well, where I was like, the best thing that could happen for FPO disc golf right now, the absolute best thing is Paige Pierce realizing her prime again, getting back in the groove and playing well because she's super entertaining to watch play disc golf. I thought her post round or post tournament interview was really great. You could tell she was very emotional, and it was really interesting how. And I was hoping she would answer this question because this is the thing that everybody was dying to know. When Perkins kind of asked her what was different, and she basically just said, "I don't know what was different." I just felt like she kind of said, which I think is like, this is the frustrating part about golf. But she said, "I've been trying my hardest every single week. I did the same thing. I tried my hardest again, and things just clicked."
Yeah.
And I think that was interesting. Like that just speaks to this game. And sometimes it's all about things just clicking and finding that magic. And hopefully, and she mentioned this too, she was like, this win is bigger than just this week. It's about what now can I do moving forward? What's the momentum going to be like? And the confidence knowing that Paige Pierce can still be Paige Pierce. And I thought that was a great interview there at the end.
Yeah, I thought it was in the interview she said something about like it came out of her mouth wrong. She corrected herself, but she said something about like it's not about this win. Like I don't care about this win. It means nothing. But what she was trying to say is the bigger picture of what led to this
Right.
win was what you just said of like my game's back. And I think like coming back from an injury where she was already having a little bit of a down season last year prior to the injury. I think they'd said it was like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
380 some days since her last win, which her injury was
Hmm.
like a little less than a year ago, I think. So she was
Yeah.
already not where she wanted to be. Then the injury happens. Then she comes back, has a rougher start to this season, and coming back from a like serious injury like that, like just learning to trust it again is like a huge hurdle. To me, that's what
Hmm.
happened this week. Was not that she hadn't trusted it before, but like she saw what she could do. It's like I can still do that, and sometimes like you just have to see that to unlock something. Now we could be saying all of this, and it could be an Ella Hansen situation where we like think, "Oh, this is going to unlock something to Paige," and the next tournament she just is gone again. I don't think so because again, it felt like at during that
Ella
interview,
doesn't have 17 majors.
exactly. It felt like during that interview,
Yeah.
that's what Paige was alluding to the whole time was like this huge amount of relief because she believed in herself again. Of like, I
Yeah.
can do it. Like it's nothing's holding me back. And like that is what I think what's more scary for the FPO field. Because yeah, Paige has done it once, but we've seen her her whole career that she can do it a lot more times in a season than just once. So and to get hot
Yeah.
now, I mean, she could pop off so many.